I am the endorsed Democratic candidate. I'm running against Brian Daly, Republican incumbent. I live in Nevada City. I own 2 small businesses. I'm an outdoor enthusiast, and if you could had a chance to see our logo, I'm a little bit of a horse-obsessed person as well. To be perfectly honest, I am not a politician. Oops, there goes my sign. I didn't really think I was going to be running for any kind of elected position. But you know, when you look around and you see the climate is on fire, the forests are burning, we have climate change, we have out of control floods and crazy winds that are knocking down millions of acres of farmland and food. And then people are really hurting. I mean, people are losing their houses, not able to afford insurance or their co-pays. Worse yet, they can't afford their medications. You know, these are people, our neighbors, really right here in our district that are living on the edge, paycheck to paycheck, that are barely scraping by. And then meanwhile, we have all these billionaires just raking in their billions of dollars. Just a little interesting tidbit, since March, when the COVID pandemic hit, we have 162 billionaires in California, just in case if anybody ever asks, see that as a trivial pursuit question. And their net worth has increased by over 20% during this time, which is in the hundreds of billions of dollars amount. We also have some corrupt politicians that are really super flush with all their corporate bribes, and they just vote on behalf of their donors, like my opponent, and then they forget the rest of us. So I just couldn't take it anymore, which is why I'm standing up and I'm saying, no, I'm going to put myself in this race, and I want to represent the people of our district of California. So what do I want to do? Number one, we kind of mentioned it already, is attacking global climate change. Here in California, we have some really good options. But you know, this isn't a subject that we just can't nibble around the edges anymore. We need aggressive climate policy, aggressive. Our time clock is speeding up and it's running out. And it's an existential threat to all existence, all life on this planet. I graduated in forestry from the University of California, Berkeley. And I really believe that we need a person who has wildland resources training and understanding at the table to discuss these types of policies. Just some little tidbits about our North State. We actually have amazing carbon stores in our forests and in our agricultural lands. And we supply 2/3 of California's drinking water and ag water. So we are literally the backbone of California's economic health. So what do? I think it's time for a green revolution. We must change our energy production to renewable and sustainable resources like wind, solar, biomass facilities, which produce from a gasification process, which is my favorite, geothermal, hydrogen fuel. This is all here. We can do this in our district. And I also think it's way past time to start packing up the fossil fuel industry and getting them out of California and out of our state houses, because their influence is no doubt there. I think it's also time to break up PG&E. Number 2 on my list is healthcare. Obviously, our hospitals are short-staffed. They're in financial trouble. Folks like us who live in these rural districts, less populated urban areas, are not getting the same services that other people get in other parts of our state. Our neighbors are literally dying because they can't afford to go to a doctor, they can't afford their medication. So now with COVID, I think we can all agree that it's time to have a Medicare for all system. So every human has healthcare because it's a right. And I think that we need to get the profit motive out of this industry, because it's not fair to pit profits against humans and people's health and welfare. I think that's intolerable. So as a state senator, I'm going to fight really hard for single-payer healthcare in California. We had something like this in 2017. It was SB 562, the Healthy California Bill. I think we need to really bring that back and look at that, because it really needs to be brought to the table. But really, in order for healthcare at this level, we really should have a federally funded and federal policy, because obviously the bigger the scale, the more easy, the less risk it is for individual risk. So I do support Medicare for all nationally. So just a little interesting thing about California, though, we do need to continue to push for a single payer. California has 40 million people. The UK has 60 million people. California's GDP, at least before this COVID thing, was actually 5th in the world, above the UK. So they have 20 million more people and less money, and yet they can do single parent. I think we can do this. Also, as you might already know, that California's healthcare money is really kind of for Medicare as a pass-through from federal money. So the money is actually already here in California, a large portion of that. So we just need to have a friendly DC administration, which we really don't, as we've kind of discussed already. So that's why I'm an advocate for voting out all corporate-funded politicians and all Republicans. So California can do this. We just need to be able to tax the billionaires who, in my opinion, have been making their billions off of tax-funded streets and roads and public schools and other projects and other things in our state, which is another reason why I support Prop 15, the Schools and Community First program. It's time to have the wealthy corporations and those corporations that own over $3 million pay their fair share. 92% of the money will come from like 10 companies or something ridiculous. Anyways, so we need to have incentives for doctors and nurses and techs to get to our rural areas, maybe some debt forgiveness programs, more fellowship programs. And then I think while we're at it, California needs to manufacture generic drugs. Absolutely. So number 3 on my list of doing things is housing. Again, I believe this is a human right. People need a safe place to sleep and lay their head every single night. We not only need to work on providing more housing units, we also need to work on preventing people from becoming homeless. In other words, keeping people in their current housing situation. So I support all legislation that places foreclosure and eviction moratoriums during the COVID-19 crisis. And I also support improving rent control laws and financing for tenant rights. Unlike my opponent who voted no on SB 999, I would have voted yes on it, which restores rent control for mobile home parks regardless of the length of the lease. I also support HUD's Title I home and property and improvement programs. And in some cases, instead of making these loans, I would like to make them grants. I think it's way less expensive to keep people in their homes than having them become homeless. We have an affordable housing shortage in California. And so while I really like the green policies in terms of more insulation, solar panels, sprinklers in fire-prone areas, I really like all those policies. Sometimes that doesn't work because it adds more money to the actual cost of the house. So in some markets, the price point doesn't support that. So I believe the state of California needs to subsidize that so we can maintain our green policies and make sure that we provide affordable housing units to folks that need them. Because it's very interesting, in our rural district, those costs are preventing affordable housing units from being built, like for example in Lassen, Susanville specifically. I also support zoning changes to allow accessory dwelling units on properties that are applicable, are appropriate. And I also think that we need to start working on refurbishing single occupancy houses, buildings rather, vacant hotels, and then this huge flood of commercial real estate that I anticipate is going to happen because of COVID and people working at home. Let's put those into affordable housing. Things that are specific to the seniors, I really do believe, because it is close to my heart with my mother who just passed away and we had this, that we have in-home assistance and that we promote independent living for older adults and folks with disabilities. So I fully support giving all Californians, because one day that'll be me, the choice to live with dignity and grace in their home and receive in-home supportive care instead of living in institutional facilities. Just to let you know that the population of Californians over 60 is going to grow 3 times as fast as the rest of the population of California in the decades to come. And the population of over 85 is going to grow even faster. So this is very important. It's important to me that bills like SB 512 continue to gain traction. This bill establishes, supports financing for long-term services. So it's like, hey, this is important. We really need to like take a good solid look at this. Some of the funding revenue streams can come from other programs like home health care, low-income housing, and even taking some of the money set aside for rehabilitation and corrections and putting this into our senior care. Ultimately, though, again, I believe that this needs to be addressed by the federal government for all Americans. So I just think that that's where the process is going. I just want to say I also received the endorsement of the UDW. It makes me kind of tear up because you guys are just amazing folks. Every time I can say that, I'm going to say that. Another to-do list is that we have to keep on protecting the most vulnerable populations in the event of natural disasters and public health crises, like now. So it's really obvious that the flaws of our system are being laid bare. And I believe that we need to continue our build out of communications infrastructure, especially in our rural districts where internet connectivity doesn't even exist in some cases. This provides for emergency services. It increases the job and education opportunities as well. So unlike my opponent, I would have voted yes on SB 1130, which seeks to expand internet infrastructure. And so then while we're at it, another thing I'd like to do as your state senator is to revamp the tax code and make billionaires pay their fair share of taxes. So I have no problem being the bad guy and pushing that and making the rich actually start to pay their fair share in California. So with that, I am here to answer any of your questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity that I've been given. I'm so happy to see all of your healthy faces looking back at me on the street. So thank you.